Prominent gay figures in history could soon play a bigger role in California classrooms. The Fair Education Act is heading to Governor Jerry Brown's desk after the state assembly passed the bill on Tuesday. Now, if enacted, the law would take in effect in January, requiring schools to teach all grade levels of the historical contributions of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people. Joining me live from San Francisco is Professor Ardel Thomas, Chair of LGBT Studies at City College of San Francisco. Thank you for being here today, Ardel. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Richard.
Why is this so important?
Well, it's important because as much complexity as we can bring to history is important, like the biggest picture possible for students. I think we've seen this when women's history had been left out, women's accomplishments, people of color, and now this new measure will ensure that LGBT people, as well as people with disabilities, will be covered in history books.
Why do you support it? And as we look at this legislation, you have given me some idea of what the main purpose behind it and what it is for, but might it make it also stand out too much? Set it aside.
Well, I have an example that I could give you. When I'm teaching my classes, on the first day, I will ask, how many people have heard of Dr. Martin Luther King? And everybody in the classroom raises their hands, including students who've only been in the United States 2 weeks. And then I ask, and how many of you have heard of Bayard Rustin? And I get, out of a class of 45 students, maybe 2 or 3. He was actually Martin Luther King's right-hand man in many ways during the Civil Rights Movement, but particularly he was the organizer of the 1963 March on Washington, and is pictured with Dr. King. When you see the famous "I Have a Dream" speech, he is in the photo towards the left-hand side of Dr. King. And he's incredibly important because during the Civil Rights Movement and the African American leaders of the Civil Rights Movement discussing how can we make the biggest impact for this March on Washington, they discussed Bayard Rustin and they discussed his being gay. He was out of the closet. And they knew that, in particular, white conservatives were going to use homophobic tactics to try and say, let's, to scare the African American civil rights leaders into not using Bayard Rustin to organize it. And the African American civil rights community had deep discussions about this and decided, no, we need the best person for this job, and it's Bayard Rustin. And
so they stood up for him, and they continued to have him part of it. I want to move on to something else, and that's an important story that you do bring up. Some critics, since you were mentioning that, Concerned Women for America say that this required curriculum might confuse children. What do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, that we don't give children nearly enough credit for their intellectual capacities at school. And I think that many of these arguments may also have been used when looking at, what are the deeper complexities of, say, Native American history in this country. We've often had, the Thanksgiving story, and I think there was concern, well, should we make it more complicated? And in order for us to really understand our history and where we've been and where we're going, as much of a full picture as possible is what we need to give our children. They'll be able to decide what seems important to them and what doesn't over time. It also will give families an opportunity to discuss the rich history of all peoples that we have in the United States.
Ardel Thomas, thank you so much. Have a very good day.
Thank you.